What's up guys, Eugene Engman here with the file production. Today I'm going to be showing you my simple 3-step method that I use to color grade log footages in Adobe Premiere Pro. It's a beautiful day outside, so let's dive right into it. When it comes to Adobe Premiere Pro, there's a dedicated panel called the Lumetri Color that allows you to, or that gives you information on any color grade or any color adjustments you make to your video. To activate this, click on Window and make sure that you have the check marks on Lumetri Color and Lumetri Scopes checked. Oh yeah, you can hear the birds outside. They are very happy we are doing some color correction and color grading. The next thing you want to do is come to your edit panel and make sure that you have Lumetri Scopes highlighted. You can go to metadata or just click on Lumetri Scopes. If you don't see this, click on the right arrow and then click on Lumetri Scopes. Make sure that it's checked. For this tutorial, I'm going to be using 3 kinds of scopes. I'm going to be using the waveform, the parade RGB, and I'm going to be using the vector scope. And all these are going to play an effect in our color correction and color grading process. To color grade a log footage, my 3 steps include color correction, skin tone correction, and applying the color grade. Let's dive right into color correction. A good habit to form is to avoid grading directly the main video footage. What you want to do is you want to create your adjustments on some form of layer, and Adobe calls these adjustment layers. To create an adjustment layer, go into your project panel, right click, and then click on new item, then click adjustment layer. It would add an adjustment layer into your project panel. I already created one, so I'm just going to drag this and put it on top of the video. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the adjustment layer, and once I highlight it, I see something called Lumetri Color. That's the default Adobe name for any adjustment I want to make on this. And one habit to also have is to make sure that your adjustments are separated. That way you can delete one without having to delete the whole color grade after spending hours and hours of color grading. So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say add Lumetri Color effect, rename, and I'm going to call this color correction. Click OK. Now for my color correction, what I'd like to do is I'd like to get rid of the vector scope for now. Right click and just uncheck it. And I would like to leave my red, my green, and my blue, as well as the waveform. The top part of the waveform gives me information of the brightest, gives me information on the brightest parts of the video. The bottom gives me information on the darkest parts, and the middle gives me information on the midtones. A good rule of thumb is to look for the highest point or the brightest spot in your video and make sure it doesn't peak. Make sure you take it to about 100 or the highest it will go before it starts peaking. When I talk about peaking, what I mean is when you start to move your whites and it gets to the highest it goes, and then it starts to compress on the top. Or you move your blacks and then it starts to compress on the bottom. So if I move it slowly, realize that it gets there, but then it starts to compress, and so I don't want any compression on the top. I'm going to set this back to 0. The top parts of your RGB or your waveform are controlled by the white, and so with my color correction set, I'm going to move this till I get to about 100 on the brightest parts. That's good enough. I'm going to do the same with the blacks, and all of a sudden the image is already starting to look good. I'll bring my highlights down a little bit. The next thing I would like to do is to add some saturation, and so I'm going to pull this all the way to about 150, and already my image is looking amazing. I mean, my video is looking amazing. The next thing I like to do is to add some contrast to my image. There's 2 ways to add contrast. You could either use the slider or you could use the curves. I like to use the curves, and so I'm going to use the white diagonal. The upper right portion of this line is for the brightest parts of your video. The lower is for the darkest, and the middle is for the midtones. And so I'm going to create a selection on the brightest, and I'm going to create one on the dark. And I want to move the bright up a little bit, and then I'm going to move the bottom part down a little bit. And already our image is beginning to look good. What I'm doing here is I'm trying to avoid any peaking. I see that I'm peaking a little bit at 0 and at 100, and so all I need to do is go back to basic correction and bring the whites down a little bit, and then bring the blacks up a little bit. Now you realize that when you look at the parade RGB, what the parade RGB tells you is it tells you about the balance between red, green and blue in your video. What it's saying is I have a lot of red more than green and blue in my midtones, and so to adjust that, you can go back to your curves, you can click on red, and you can bring down the midtones slightly on red. I like the way it is, and so I'm just going to leave it. You could adjust the blue and bring up the blue, and that's how you adjust the midtones. And that's it. That's all with color correction. I could add a little bit of contrast to the video by using the slider, and that's it. Now that we are done with color correction, let's move on to the adjustment of the skin tones. And again, to adjust the skin tones, I'm going to create another Add Lumetri Color effect. And I'm going to, with the Lumetri Color selected, I'm going to rename it, and I'm going to say skin tone. With skin tone selected, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn off my vector scope. I'm going to turn on my vector scope, and I'm going to turn off my parade RGB, and I'm also going to turn off my waveform for now. The nice thing about the vector scope is this line between the yellow and the red. There's a line called the skin tone line, and what you want to do is, I don't know what this is called, but I like to call it fluff. What you want to do is you want to take this fluff and make sure that it's concentrated along this line. If it's concentrated along the line, then your skin tones will be mostly correct, or will be mostly accurate, and it doesn't matter what nationality you are. And so to do this, I like to go into the HSL secondary. The HSL secondary is a really good tool. It allows you to have full control over independent colors in your video. To do this, I'm going to click on this eyedropper, and then I'm going to select any portion of her face. The next thing I like to do is I like to click on color and gray. Make sure color and gray is selected, and then just click on it, and then just move the slider till I see any portion of her face. Okay, I know that skin tones are between red and orange, and so I'm going to leave it right here, and then I'm going to move the saturation. The H, the S and the L. The H is for hue, the S is for saturation, and the L is for luminance. And so I'm going to move this till I see any portion of her face, and there we go. Right over here I start to see some portion of her face. I'm going to move this slider a little bit. You might be wondering what these triangles are for. The upper triangle is to help you select the color more accurately, and the lower triangle is to help you transition between colors more smoothly. So I'm going to extend this a little bit. I'm going to do that for the saturation, making sure that I don't select any other portions of the video, and then I'm going to move my luminance. There's something about this video. You realize that this part of the video, the orange light and the orange counter are the same as her face. And so what I want to do, it's okay if I select these, but mostly I'm just interested in her face, and so far as I select her face, I'm good. Another pro tip is that when you are videoing, make sure your background doesn't have any colors. that are the same as the face. This takes a little bit of time, so just bear with me here. The next thing I like to do is add some denoise. This will take away any noise in the selection, and then add some blur. This will make sure that it transitions really nicely. Then by default you have your midtown selected. I'm going to go to a color wheel, and then I'm going to select these 3 triangles. And I like to add the most extreme color. I'm going to add blue to the skin tones, the midtones and the shadows. And the reason why I'm doing this is so that when I uncheck it, I can find out all the parts of the image that have been selected, and then I can further fine tune it. And then I'm going to just reset. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some orange to the skin tones. So I'm going to add some orange to the midtones, and you can see that her skin is beginning to look good. And then I'm going to add some orange to the shadows as well. And here's a before and here's an after. And as I do that, what I want to do is I'm looking at my vector scope to make sure that this is being concentrated along this line. And so when I put in so much red, it moves towards the red, but I want it to stay within the line. Then in my shadows, I'm going to also make sure that it stays within the line. Then it's already looking good. And then you can add some temperature to it. Too much of temperature, I'm gonna add about just a little bit. And then you can add some tints to it to make sure that it's right over there. Perfect. Then that's your before, that's your after. That's your before and that's your after. You could add some contrast to it if you need to. Okay. But that's too much. Going to bring the temperature down a little bit. And there you have it, folks. That's all there is to grading the skin tones. Yeah, I'm also grading the back part of it because it's the same color of her face. If I didn't want to, I could change the light to either white or maybe blue, a different color, and I could avoid using oranges back. It's good. It's a beautiful day outside and it's good. So what we have here is, I'm going to turn this off. We've gone from a log footage to color correction, and then we've gone from color correction to adjusting the skin tones. The next thing I like to do to complete the grade is to add a color grade. Color grading is the videographer's signature. Basically, it's not color correction, it's not adjusting any skin tone, it's adding your signature to your video look after color correcting and adjusting skin tones. And so to color grade, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to create a Lumetri Color effect, and I'm going to name this color grade. With color grade selected, I'm again going to click on the skin tones. And what I'm going to do here is, again, I'm going to click on color in gray. I'm going to move my saturation to about this point. I'm going to move my luminance to this point. And what I want to do is I want to isolate her face. Now if your funnel is a lot to the right, you're not going to see a button, but when you move it, you see the button here. What I want to do is I want to click on invert. Basically, it says that all the whites are not going to be affected, but all the things with of color are going to be affected. And again, I go to my color wheel. I like to go to my color wheel and just put in a very good blue, just to see all the things that have been affected in the image. And so her face is good. I'm not touching that. Then I'm going to reset it. And then I like to, depending on the grade, I like to either add a blue or an orange to it, or a teal color. And with this, I'm going to go a little towards the green in my midtowns. And then I'm going to do the same thing in the shadows. I'm going to go a little towards the green in the shadows. But you know, I like blue. But color grading is just a signature. And so I'm going to do just a little bit of green in the shadows. And there you have it. That was how it looked. That's how it looks with. So color grading is just adding a signature. It's not that complicated. The real work is in color correcting and adjusting your skin tones. If you can get color correcting and adjusting your skin tones right, just play around with color grading. And so what we did is we went from, I'm just going to turn all of this off. We went from color correction to adjusting the skin tones, and then we just added a nice color grade. I hope this was helpful. I'll catch you guys in the next video. See ya.